Okay, folks, it's 5 o'clock. Let's get started. Welcome to the joint session of Extra Mailmate. I am Ken Murchison, your rookie chair of Mailmate. This is Brian Gondwana. He's chair of Extra. Since this is my first try at this, Brown's going to let me drive and he'll ride shotgun in case I get off into the weeds. Here's your note. This covers conduct, privacy, and IPR rights. If you haven't read this before, assume you probably have since we're at day 4. Please read this, and all the document links are at the bottom for the full coverage of what is discussed there. Continuing along with conduct and our anti-harassment policy. If anyone has any issues, please go see the Ombuds team, and we have a unnamed member of that team in our room if it comes to that. Again, we're using Meetup.
Then go straight to the Ombuds team.
We're using Meetup for this meeting. If you are remote, please stay muted until you join the queue and you're recognized. If you do have a headset, those are definitely preferable than using a built-in mic. If you do want to join the queue, please make sure you're logged in via the on-site tool and raise your hand, and we will get to you when that time is appropriate.
Remind people that we are on the extra room and not on the mail.
This is true. Yes. We are currently, the first session here is going to be extra, so we are on the extra room. I don't believe there's going to be a separate one for Mailmate.
No,
So
we just stay in the one room the whole time.
the separate notes still correct.
Yeah, it'll do separate notes. Even if you don't have anything to say, it'd still be nice if you log into the on-site tool just so that we get the numbers to prove that there were more than 2 people here. So please do pop out your phone and scan that QR code.
Here's the links to the agenda, Meetup information, and everything else. You probably should have seen these well before this session, most likely. Okay, our agenda for today, we've just gone through all the administrivia. Extra is going to be very short, about 5 minutes. Mailmate's going to take up the bulk of this hour. The extra agenda is just reviewing 4 documents here, talk about the future of Extra. And as I said previously, the bulk of this is going to be on the Mailmate stuff. We've got 3 documents for proposed work items. We have a charter discussion, which will be led by Murray. And then we will get to any other business if we have time. Anyone want to bash the agenda before we get started? Hearing none.
All right, should we hit the extra agenda then?
Yes.
We should be able to get through it fairly quickly. There are a couple of things that came up since we put this together. There was the auto discovery draft that we discussed at the last IETF, and we weren't sure whether it belonged in this group or not, but there was some chatter on the mailing list about that a couple of days ago. I don't know if Ben is here or not.
I don't see him
Cool.
logged in.
All right then. So Arndt, did you want to speak to 6855 bis?
Where's this join the queue?
You don't have to worry about that. You're presenting.
Hey.
I think 6855 is cooked. BIS is cooked, except that the Ombuds team will be very unhappy if I don't fix that address. And that's really all I have to say about it. It's really the same for JMAP access. I might say more about that, particularly about poor quality of many implementations of IMAP.
That's the next session.
Well, that's really all there is to say. Both of them are cooked as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. So Murray, the JMAP access went through its second last call fine and is back with you. And was there anything you needed for message limit? On that, it says waiting for AD, go ahead.
Alexa, anything that you're aware of?
Alexei, I don't actually remember. I might have dropped the ball. Do I need to do a revision? There might have been some comments so that I haven't.
Calendars, as I recall, is ready except for IANA reviews because we've had an unresponsive author. So that was something we were going to work on fixing.
That was for a JMAP
I'm
one.
sorry, that's JMAP.
Yeah.
You're right. Message limit is showing revised ID needed. Let me see if I put a comment on why that would be. Hopefully I did. No, I didn't. So let me look. But I flagged it that way because there was some reason for me to think there's going to be a new version. So hold on.
It's quite possible that I agreed to do some changes and completely didn't do them.
If there was a comment like, I'll change that, then that's usually enough for me to just put that statement.
Okay.
I'll double check.
Okay. We'll just take it offline. So you double check, you ping me. Okay. All right.
Okay.
Thanks.
Bron may already know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask for my own education. Murray, does this group have to stay open until all these things pass into the editor queue, or how does that work?
There's no hard and fast rule. I tend to leave the working group open in case something comes up in Auth 48 that needs a consensus verification. If the working group is really eager to close, then I can kill it because I know where to find you all. But I would prefer to leave it open, just like that's my pattern.
Okay, so it'll stay open, but no new work will come into this working group extra. Okay.
And when it gets to the point where we're actually totally done, I will contact the chairs and say, do we want to leave the list open or should we close it? And then the closing announcement will go out.
Cool. All
Thank
right.
you.
So that answers that question. In terms of actions that have come out of this, then, you said you need to do another draft for 6855?
It doesn't really matter to me. You can do it in RFC at your time. but-
To my mind, these aren't. To my mind, changing an address is acceptable during author's 48 hours. It's just author's address.
Yeah, okay, that can easily be changed with the editor.
Insubstantial.
That's fine. I will submit both of them then.
And JMAP access to no.
JMAP
One of
access,
them to IETF wide last call.
yeah, JMAP access, I believe, is already with the editors. Yeah, it's in the RFC editor queue, so it just needs Murray to say it's fine to go ahead. I think. Cool, awesome. And Alexi, you've got an action to do a revised draft for message limit. And the other two are fine. They're already out there with ASG. Fantastic. Thank you. We're done with extra unless anyone has any final business in the minute we have left.
Some extra work.
Thank you. Awesome. All right. Thank you.
That's me. It's me.
Okay, so we're now moving into the mail maintenance section, and the first presenter is going to be, actually, the first two presenters will be John Levine.
Two people, John. You must be two people.
Me.
It's more than I'm two-faced. Okay, this draft came up. I guess we tried to dispatch it last time and we decided to wait for this working group, and here we are. So next slide, please. The problem is simple and well-known. If you have, a lot of people don't know their own email addresses, and it is really easy to get mail like this one, which, this is an actual message that my co-author got, intended for, it's full of PII. It's not spam, but it's not for him. And there's no way for him to tell the sender that it was sent to the wrong place. And I have a Gmail address, which is my name. And there are probably about 100 people in North America with the same name I have, and they all think that that's their email address. So I get the damnedest stuff. So this is a real problem that I hope we can address. Next, please. So what would we do? And the answer is we want some sort of button in the user interface, analogous to the spam button, but it's a not me button. And it's not, and it's different from a spam button because it's not spam. You don't want to punish the sender. You want to tell the sender that they're sending stuff to the wrong place. And as it says here, the button's at the bottom. But it has a variety of benefits. I mean, first, it gets the junk out of your mailbox. It minimizes the liability for, like, I get mail for a physician in Massachusetts discussing his psychiatric hospital shifts, and I really don't want to know about that, so this, again, it's a real problem, and if they're suitably motivated, they might even find the right recipient. Next, please. So so here's all the stuff that the sender could do. They could do all this, like if you need somebody, find somebody's email address. There's all this other stuff you can do. And I think I should have said so in the previous one. This is not intended for personal mail. I mean, I occasionally get mail from someone who thinks I am his brother. And for him, I just write back and I say, you got the wrong guy. This is intended for transactional mail that's coming from an institution that doesn't have a way to, it's typically from don't reply at big company. Next. So what we did was there was already a widely used one-click unsubscribe feature. There's the list unsubscribe header can have a URL. You add, there's a list unsubscribe one-click header that says that it works for one-click. And what you do is whereas the regular unsubscribe is a get, you simply do a post to the unsubscribe with a well-defined string to make it clear this is a one-click unsubscribe. So this will be exactly the same thing. It would be a different URL, it would be a different message. And when this came up before, somebody pointed out that people read their mail offline. So what do you do if it's offline? And the answer is the same thing you do if you reply to a message offline. If you can queue a reply to send by SMTP, you can queue a not me, or for that matter, you can queue a spam, to do the post when the MUA is back online. Because these posts are intended not to be interactive. I mean, they send the post, you get the answer back. There's no notification to the user. So it's perfectly possible to queue it and do it offline. And RFC 8058 has been wildly successful. A couple of large mail providers insist that anybody sending bulk mail must provide them if they're sending more than, I think, 5,000 a day. So the one-click unsubscribe definitely works and is definitely widely used. Next. So here's the recipient. Here's the proposal. Like, the header might be wrong recipient, and it's got a URL with a hash token identifying the message and the recipient. And you do this post to the URL where the wrong recipient equals true to make it clear that this is a non-interactive wrong recipient message, and the sender presumably uses this post to do something reasonable with it. At least stop sending mail to the wrong person. So this is a short draft. Next, please. So I mean, I hope MailMate will adopt it. I have talked to senders at MOG who say they are interested in this. So I think that finding evidence that people will implement this should not be hard. And I think that's the last slide. Yep.
Yes. Any comments or feedback?
Neil's first.
Neil's in. Go ahead, Neil.
Not a lot of comments other than to say that sounds like a sensible idea, and the one-click stuff I agree was good. So making this as similar as possible makes perfect sense to me. That's it.
Neil, question for you. Would you implement this in our client?
Yes, I think so. You have to think about how, but yes.
Okay, Pete.
Pete Resnick. As to adoption, I think it's perfectly reasonable, especially if we've got the sound of people who are looking to implement this. Let's confirm that, but that sounds good. On the mechanism itself, I'm wondering if an email-based mechanism, given that this thing has a hash to identify the message in question, that's going to go back to the original folks, is something along the lines of an MDN even a plausible thing, or will people simply not implement a mechanism like that? Because you could give it as an alternative, especially for offline clients. You send a message that has the hash, so it would be identifiable to the sender, who can then say, oh, this got to the wrong place. It would still be an action of the same button, but it might use email instead of the post. And
Yes. Well,
yeah.
I have two answers. I mean, the first answer is that, sure, you could do that. I mean, the other answer, though, is that we've had the one-click unsubscribe for years, and nobody has ever complained that doing it offline was hard.
And unsubscribe seems just slightly different to me, only because it is a mailing list, and you can sort of identify that you want to go to that unsubscribe page, and it does end up with some kind of action, I believe.
No. I mean, the unclick one, the unclick one subscribe is typically done.
It's a silent post.
It's done as a side effect of reporting it as spam.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
no. The regular unsubscribe is it's a get.
Right.
The one-click unsubscribe is specifically designed to be non-interactive. There's no interaction with the user. There's no way to try to bargain with them and say, "Are you sure you want to unsubscribe?" Like, damn right I do.
Right.
Okay, so yeah, so we deliberately, we know, basically given a lot of experience that this non-interactive unsubscribe post
Works well.
We figured we can do the same thing. So that my guess is if we asked Neil, would you use the same code? He probably would say yes.
And I'll say again, I got no problem with this going forward as is. If folks on both ends think that having a mail mechanism in addition to this is useful, great. If not, it's not something that I.
We can bike shed the mechanism once we adopt it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, John.
My concerns are identical to Pete's, so I probably don't need to repeat them and won't. No problems adopting this. Small nervousness about tying this kind of mechanism to the need for a web interface. Again, a little bit different than subscribe, but that's a detail we can hash out once we get the thing adopted.
Brian.
I'm just going to stay here. I have seen discussion of doing more than just wrong recipient to also have I never asked for this. Basically, the thing that you get with social media where you can say, report this post. This is sexually explicit material. This is a scam. This is a range of different things. Do we want a more general mechanism rather than adding an ad hoc one for every single thing? Because certainly this is one case of I got the wrong message here, but there are also other cases of being able to report back why you don't like what the problem with this message is.
Again, you could certainly do that. I think this is one of those human factors things that the sender is dying to know exactly what the recipient thinks. The recipient just wants him to buzz off and is not interested in providing a lot of extra data. So again, if there was some evidence that recipients would actually have some interest in using a mechanism like that, sure, we could build it. But I wouldn't want to build it without some evidence that it was useful.
Certainly, if you're on Facebook, for example, and you say report this post, it says, why do you want to report it? And that mechanism has evolved and been used by a lot of people in that context.
Yeah.
The question is really, does it apply in this context or not? There's certainly the discussion more about that too.
Given how bad our track record is on user interfaces, like like I said, we can certainly build it, but our track record of guessing what sort of UI people will want to use is not great.
So we're pushing the envelope on our 10 minutes for this topic. So
Yeah, actually,
if we could leave
it's supposed
the,
to be yes and no.
yeah, if we could leave the remaining comments to whether you think it's a good idea or a bad idea and leave the design elements aside, that'd be great.
I support the idea.
Okay, Arndt.
I like the idea, but I have a question about using it for personal mail. Why is that a bad idea or inappropriate? To me, it seems that something like that post might go straight into the address book. If you use, say, Fastmail like everyone does, then Fastmail might provide that on the outgoing mail. And if someone says I'm the wrong recipient, it just shows up in the sender's address book. Why is this off limit for now?
This is typically for mail sent from a bulk sender
Yeah.
that doesn't, I mean.
Right, but why do you want to limit it to that?
If I can interrupt real quick, that we can probably argue that on the list. Right? You're good with the idea overall, correct?
Oh, the idea is great.
Great.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Publish it already.
Thank you.
Okay.
Philip.
Philip, I think I generally support the idea. I'm just a little bit concerned if this could be used by like phishing and scammers and stuff. Like if some party has collected a bunch of leaked, login data from different websites, where there's a PTOW at some website that's Peter Tao, in another one at some other website that's Philip Tao, and then now they're trying to guess if ptao at icloud.com is Philip Tao or Peter Tao, to be able to better target phishing attempts in the future. And then so they send one to confirm which identity it might be. I just have some general concerns, but I think it's worth adopting and
Yeah,
we can figure those out.
Thank you for volunteering to help us write the security concerns.
Jim.
Jim Fenton. Support this. I have the same problem John Levine does. The one, and I'm glad you've checked with the senders to make sure that they support this. I'm also concerned to make sure, and we need to make sure that people that are implementing MUAs will support this as well, so that the wrong recipient button will appear.
Yeah, I mean the sad fact is the largest MUAs are webmails, and they'll do it.
Okay, Lyndon.
Yeah, Lyndon Ehrenberg. I want to plus 1,000 this as it is described by John right now. Not only in the bulk sender cases is useful, but for us in healthcare, if private information leaks out, that is trouble for everybody. Having a direct method for people to make explicitly clear, you accidentally sent me something possibly in violation of PIPA or HIPAA. Senders want to know that immediately. So for us, we will have this implemented before I get home. Also, leave it the way it is, because we could be bite shedding this for the next 18 meetings otherwise.
Thank you, Lyndon. Okay, next topic is the expires header.
Cool. So I've minuted the action that you'll make a call for adoption on the list.
Yes. And just to remind everybody, our charter requires us to have at least somebody that intends to implement, and from what I've heard in the room, we have that already.
Okay, well, here's another old idea, the expires header field. Next, please. So yeah, it's a header that says when a message expires, and expires means whatever it means in English. It's been around in various forms for a long time. It was defined in 1998. Yeah, in 1998, it was defined for gateways from X400 mail, which had a similar feature. 40 years ago, it was added. It was in Usenet messages, and on Usenet we used it quite extensively. And the goal is quite simple, which is to take the exact same expires header and say that you can use it in the same way in any mail message rather than a mail message that happened to be gatewayed from X400. Next. And there's a laundry list of typical uses, but it's typical, but it's anything that stops being interesting after a particular date. So like if it, like sending out the agenda for this meeting, it would be probably a good idea to make it expire on Saturday because the meeting will be over, or today's weather report or today's lunch, we make those expire tomorrow. And the commercial mailers, of course, think this is a fine idea because, if you have a Cyber Tuesday sale, then the day after Cyber Tuesday it can expire, and it stops being busy. You will avoid annoying people by sending them ads for stuff they can't buy anymore. Next. So we tried this 2 years ago, AD sponsored, and we got 4 reviews saying it was ready, and we got 2 individuals who had strong objections to it, and it never went anywhere. So it's back. So next, please. So I hope the W working group adopts it. I think we can go back and look at the objections and see what, if anything, we need to do about it. And given that this header has been in use in other contexts, literally for decades. I mean, I hope we can say, okay, we'll use the same header to mean the same thing now. Okay.
Yep, John is in the queue. Go ahead, John.
This is a slightly perverse question, but given that this has been standardized for years and around for years and widely deployed for years, could we solve this problem by adding a couple of sentences, adding a paragraph to the applicability statement and just move on?
So, over to you. Just do it in the AS document.
If we get the same result, I wouldn't object.
I'm just wondering if that would save some time and energy. Now, depending on how far this draft, and I haven't read the most recent version, goes, if you start talking about what this actually means as distinct from telling people that it's okay to use it, then probably it's inappropriate there. But if all we're doing is reaffirming that this has been standardized for years and go ahead and use it when you need to, it seems to me that we should be able to dispose of it very quickly.
Yeah, John, the existing standards only standardize it in these 2 other contexts, and I have no strong opinions about how we remove any way to remove those context limitations and say you can use it anywhere there's an email message. I'll be happy.
Well, applicability statements have certainly been used for worse. So as I say, just a thought.
John, given the fact that you're advocating for possibly putting in the AS, are you comfortable documenting this in some way, shape, or form and possibly adopting it here?
Which John are you asking?
Oh, I'm sorry, Clemson.
I think you volunteered yourself as the problem, John Clinton.
See, we have the right problem.
I think if we're really putting 5321 this to rest, the answer is yes.
Okay.
I'll collaborate with the other John to make certain that what I'm suggesting doing really works.
Okay, thank you. Pete?
Before Clinton said what he did, I was just going to get up and say this seems reasonable with, an appropriate sentence or section saying don't do stupid things. But if we're okay.
It's hard to do that normatively.
I understand, but if we can do that in the AS and put it to bed, I'm all for it.
Yeah.
Alexei?
Okay, having heard this, let's conceptually adopt it, and however we decide to get it standardized, I'm happy with.
You see our AD stepping up, which may pop this balloon quickly.
No, I'm excited by this new momentum that I wasn't creative enough to come up with myself. The thing that stalled this last time, though, was non-agreement on what expires means, and I'm not hearing anyone bring that up as a concern anymore. Have I gone insane?
So long as
No one.
Well, Murray, precisely my dividing line is that if we have to define what it means, then I don't think I want it anywhere near the AS. And but I hope we have not defined what it means.
So I'm looking into the future where this comes to the ISG, and we're gonna tell them this is now authorized for use in mail, and it doesn't mean anything specific. Are we sure that that's the message we want to put forward? That's all.
Well,
That seems like the exact opposite of what I was hearing the last time I sponsored this.
Could either Murray or John Levine briefly outline what the objections were last time?
Expires in the first one bullet you have here, 2156 defined in 1985 translated export mail.
Yeah. It says something like it stops being applicable or relevant or something, pretty
Vague.
sort of a dictionary definition of the word.
And then 850 defined it for Usenet, which was no better. And there hasn't been a more solid definition than that since.
Yeah.
So when this came up under sponsorship, the complaint was, what do I do if that date is in the past? What does an MUA do? What does an MTA do? And there was no consensus on that point. And that's where it stalled. So if we're okay with never reaching consensus on that point, then the AS, I think, is a great path forward. But if this is going to come up in last call, like, what the hell does this actually mean? Then we haven't accomplished anything. So I just are we okay with that being the path? That's all.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly, when I went back and reviewed this stuff, I mean, it sounded like people were asking us to come up with detailed definitions of what MUAs do, which just does not sound like a good idea.
Right. So this is Barry, being next on the queue. This is kind of like the reaction. It's a visual. The thumbs up reaction does not have anything that says what it means either. There are some things that just they mean what they mean, and the vague descriptions that we have there are good enough for me, and I'm happy with either the AS or a separate document. The only thing, I guess, two concerns about it being in the AS. One is that if it's in a separate document, people can find it more easily and are more aware that we standardized it. And the other is that it has a potential to hold up the AS in the manner that Murray was just talking about. So I might prefer it as a separate document just for that reason, but I have no objection if we decide to go with the AS.
I'm thinking of like process issues, like can the AS update the IANA entry?
Of course it can.
Okay.
It's a proposed standard.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I jumped in ahead of you. I'm totally fine with either method. In fact, if you really want to bulletproof this process, do both of them at the same time. And if the AS passes, you can just drop this document.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm next on the queue. Yeah, I've said with my kind of MUA author hat on, that was the question that I was thinking, what am I meant to do with this? Because, and I do think that is an issue. Like if it's a standard, it needs to be interoperable, and it's hard for it to be interoperable if we're not really saying, what this means. Like, it's not as a complete deal breaker, but it'd be nice if there was something attached to it, like, with your examples. Is this a deal that expires? Great, I can show that. Is this a login link that just won't work at all because it's only time limited 15 minutes? I feel I could do a lot more if I knew what it was kind of more precisely that expired. I'm not saying this can't work at all without that, but it would be a lot more useful to me, I think.
Yeah. Could we work this out after we adopt it?
Yeah, I was just going to have to ask that question. If it seems like a good idea, we can figure out the semantics down the road. And if we can't, then we just abandon it. Brian?
Me? Yeah, so Neil, I think the answer to your question there is SML. See other working group. Regarding the definition of expires, I think we'd need to have text that basically says expires means that the sender believes this message is no longer useful after this time. That's
Pretty
all.
much what it says. Yeah.
That's all expires needs to say. And then
I think that's
maybe
reasonable.
interpret that as
go from there.
whatever. I favor adoption. I think Murray's idea of doing both in parallel and taking whatever works is great. Put an expires header on the draft.
Michael?
With my mail storage hat on, I'm okay with adoption, but I think it needs to be clarified what, if anything, can be done on the mail storage side. Because can we filter out these messages, or maybe you don't even show them to the MUAs, so then the MUAs don't have to do anything if you want to set a policy for a mailbox or policy for a set of mailboxes. And right now there seems to be a lot of hand waving, at least in the draft that I saw. But again, that can be handled at adoption, maybe kind of clarifying language, but I'm fine with moving it forward.
Daniel?
Yep, Daniel Eggers here. I think one of the problems with this is that it's similar to the sender saying this is an important email, in that the sender can't decide when something is important or not, whether not something is important to me. And this has a similar smell where maybe I'm a kind of person who likes to keep emails around about what was for launch for the last year, because I really love that. And the sender telling me that that email should go away or something just feels very weird. I don't think this is something that a mail user agent can act upon in any meaningful way, because what you as a sender decide expires means might be very different from what another sender means. Things expired means, and I as a recipient think about it in a completely different way. So it's sort of a weird piece of information for me to attach to an email. Sorry, but I mean, yeah, I don't mind adopting it, but I just don't see how it could be
We've already gone over time, but real quick, couldn't that just be a config option in the MUA, similar to what you do when you delete a message? Do I just strike it through and color it red, or do I put it right to the trash? In this case, you could say, I'll just remove anything that comes with expires, or I want to keep it.
Per recipient sweep rules, something.
Okay, Alexi.
Per sender.
Yeah, sorry, we're probably going into design space again. We had some discussions about whether mailstore should automatically delete, and I think we agreed that they shouldn't. I think in my webmail, I'll implement it, as you say, as a strike through or a label when viewing the message saying, you know, it's expired now.
Yeah, no, we all agree this does not mean, this is not an instruction to delete it. This is just advice. It's not interesting. Okay.
All right, I reopened the queue real quick. John and Lyndon, if you could be quick.
Everything I was going to say, I've already said in the chat.
I was just going to say, to address the ambiguity, maybe we could look at adding into the structure body of the header an intent tag that the person who puts expires in can say, I want this to expire off the disk, or, you know, and define it in that way. That lets us push it out.
Okay, so I haven't heard anybody that says we absolutely should not do this. We will adopt it, we'll take it to the list. If nobody has any strong objections, we'll try to flesh out the various issues that have been brought up. All right, next up is Arndt.
This is going to take longer than my first two drafts. Thanks, Pete. Right. One of my problems with Unicode Mail is that I get pushed back because the syntax is extremely liberal. I get questions that I can't answer, the type, what addresses are safe to provision and will not cause problems elsewhere, will not cause demerits in spam filters. I get fun discussions about security problems, change of directions, Unicode 2006, and so on. So I want a new BCP to describe a character repertoire about 40,000, a quarter of Unicode, that's big enough to accommodate what people want to use without being such a quarrel magnet. Next. This is not supposed to be a change of the syntax. I'm only proposing to make a repertoire for provisioning and validating human addresses, not to change what something like Zendesk can do, or what the Perl maintainer invented for his email address. You can still do whatever you want. But if you want some assurance that a login field on a WordPress site will accept your email address, then this is what I want the repertoire to be. Next. I also want to unify the two syntaxes that we have for email addresses now. We have one syntax within the IETF, which permits double dot, for example, in local parts. And the W3C has a separate syntax defined as a regex. Our extension to Unicode is extremely permissive, not quite good. The W3C has not been able to update its regex at all. I think that's because a regex cannot be updated to cover Unicode in a useful fashion. Next, please. I have 5 design goals listed. The most important thing to talk about there is the word obvious. I don't just want safety, I want safety to be obvious such that people don't worry and complain and ask the same questions over and over again. Next, please. So I have talked to people in a lot of the countries where there is either use of Unicode addresses today, there actually is, or a desire to use it, and tried to put together rules that accommodate what is used or wanted. Not at all the same thing. I'm still missing 1 or 2 countries. We'll get to that. And the draft that I've uploaded, unfortunately, does not quite cover Japan. So it's growing a little more complex than I want. Still, it's better than not having it. Next. That's what I would like you to read and what I would like you to adopt.
Okay, we have John in the queue. Go ahead, John.
John has read this and reviewed, giving good comments.
But not necessarily the latest version. I think there's a problem here, and I think it's worth addressing that problem, but I am concerned that we need to parse it out a little bit. For starters, speaking as an active participant in the W3C I-18N group, but certainly not speaking for that group, the morass in W3C, which has prevented an update to this, is a problem. It's not an IETF problem in this draft. Not only is it not going to fix it, but it's likely to make it worse because it takes us down the notorious path we've been down with IDNs of ending up with 2 or 3 or more competing standards in terms of what the user sees. Second observation is that part of this, which goes to the extreme over-permissiveness of the SMTP UTF-8 standards, is a real problem, and my referring to it as extreme over-permissiveness tells you what I think about the problem. But that problem ought to be addressed by updating 6530 or 6531 or 6532 or all 3 of them, and not creating a BCP which says, never mind what those say is okay. This is what you should really do instead, because that's just a source of confusion in an area where there's been a lot of confusion already and a lot of mess. So if we adopt this, I'd like to adopt the question of doing revisions to the base SMTP UTF-8 specs along with it. There are other parts of this which is a standalone document I think will be fine, and advice I think will be fine. I'm also very concerned about moving this forward on the basis of asking all the countries we know of which have attempted to do some of this stuff in their scripts, because there are going to be a lot of countries which are not on that list, even if they're only because they intend to do it tomorrow rather than having done it already.
John, quick question. If we were going to update 6350 through 52, would you think that would be appropriate work for this group, or would you want a separate working group for that?
I don't think you can hear the sigh that I just had a little bit ago.
We did not.
That's a discussion I think I want to have with Murray.
Okay, fair enough.
It depends on how far into various very complicated issues you want to take this group, and I would suggest that even trying to process this draft, which is what's giving me small anxieties, would take you into most of those issues whether there was some, whether we address the base effects or not.
If I may paraphrase, it's worse than that.
Thank you.
So John, what I'm hearing from you is this, there's a problem to be solved here, and it might be worth taking a crack. We're just not sure exactly what form that might be at this point.
I would propose a conversation between the authors of this draft and myself and Murray and you. And then, maybe we can figure out a potential map. But
sorry, and
the chairs.
No.
Okay, so we'll do as John suggested. Once we hash out a plan, we'll bring it back to the working group to see if there's something to be adopted.
yeah, and if we can hash out a plan, I don't think that needs to wait for the next meeting. That ought to be able to be done on the list.
Yes. I just wanted to ask the question, I guess, of what's the alternative to this? The alternative is the status quo, and the status quo is people are starting to do stuff like this badly, right?
pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
So by not documenting something, we're not making things better. So I do think there is some urgency on solving this problem somehow.
I would certainly agree with that. The difficulty again is that, from my point of view, part of the difficulty we're running into here is that the EII working group decided it didn't have a long enough pole, 10 feet or otherwise, to touch this problem, and therefore punted, and that's turning out to have bad consequences.
Daniel?
Yeah, I don't know what the right way forward is, but it'd be very exciting to improve the status quo.
Thank you. Any other feedback? I want to leave enough time to discuss the charter, so we're getting to that point. Good with this? All right, thank you, Aaron.
So what are the next steps? We're minting here conversation. Who's organizing that?
Sorry.
I was just going to say that I'm happy that there will be next steps.
Yeah, I will send an email to Murray, Arndt, and John Clenson and start the discussion.
Yeah.
Thanks. Okay, you're up, boss man.
Yeah. Next slide, please. So you may have seen post-chartering, there were some concerns about a couple of clauses that appear in our charter, and I've highlighted the two of them here. This is the section that contains the two problems, and those are the two purported problems. The first is that before we'll take anything in this working group that is intended for the standards track, we want to hear a commitment to implement from at least two sources, two independent parties that are intending to do that. And the contention is that this is too high a bar for just merely adopting a document. Now this got through the process just fine. There was ample review, so there's nothing that we need to change immediately, but I wanted to bring it back to here and say, are we still comfortable with this constraint? Now, some of the counter arguments have been, well, the routing area does this for everything anyway. Ideally, everything that exits the standards track has met this bar, but the counter argument is that no, we have never done this in the IETF. There's never been any kind of restriction on just what will get adopted. Is a working group free to make that distinction itself? Is this something that I wanted to open up to the floor. Are we all happy with this the way it is? Is there, I'm seeing 3 thumbs ups in the room. I'm not taking a humming or anything, but I saw thumbs that are, is this something we should worry about? Ken.
Speaking as myself, the IETF mantra has always been rough consensus of running code. And I would like to see us get back to that and possibly even bring in the hackathon to make sure we're putting stuff out there that works the first time and not just putting stuff out there that nobody's going to use.
Thanks. Barry.
This is Barry. What Ken said, and this isn't the first time it's been done in the IETF. It's probably the first time it's been in a charter. And, you know, you could argue that, but certainly working groups have chosen to require that less formally in the past. So I think it's perfectly fine.
Right. One of the arguments, by the way, is what I forgot that I had another slide. Thank you, Ken. Companies that have roadmaps might not want to reveal that they intend to implement something. So this can be a concern as well. Alexi. Oh, I'm sorry. Arnt's in the queue first.
Then maybe answer the question.
Right.
I uploaded my nice address draft and didn't actually tell anyone about it. Within a week, a couple of people, 3 people in total, but well, fairly quickly, 2 people sent mail, oh, if you get this, we'll implement it. But kind of conditional on it becoming an RFC. I would say that at adoption time, there should be some scope for the chairs to judge this. At last call time, I can see that recording and having a public commitment is okay. At adoption time, not so much.
Well, one of the suggestions was to loosen the adoption constraint to say intent to implement. So if you get 2 people who are 2 different parties who say, yeah, we'll try to do this, or we intend to do this, even if they don't do it later, that's enough to at least get it into the working group.
Right.
That was one of the compromises that was proposed. How would you feel about that?
I feel that it's a good thing to stop working on documents that people don't implement, and any kind of phrasing that has a little bit of gray area is good enough to try. If it turns out to be a bad idea, we can change it later.
Okay. Thank you. Alexi.
Yeah, I don't think that requiring intent for 2 implementations to do this. Obviously, you cannot have existing implementation because the spec is not finished, right? I don't think it's a very high bar. It basically prevents us wasting time. So if the author cannot convince at least one other person, or if not being implemented, 2 other parties to implement that's already a sign in itself that it's not going to work out probably. Okay. As far as companies not willing to admit publicly, I think we do have mechanisms in IETF that people can talk to chairs and report on with understanding that this is not going to be disclosed, but I think we trust our chairs to be proxies in this case. I know it's not ideal.
Or ADs, you're right.
Yeah, exactly, but I think it's acceptable.
Sorry to interrupt. In the case of what Arndt just mentioned, if a participant of the working group has knowledge but is not willing to disclose, can they just tell the chair, I know of some people, but I can't tell you who they are? And obviously there's a trust relationship that it's not BS.
Yeah, I know it is a bit tricky in the sense of, in many cases, chair chairs or chair will probably trust the person reporting this. At the same time, if you want some kind of external validation, maybe you ask people, can you at least tell the chair, email the chair saying, you know, this is okay, and this message is not going to be published on the mailing list, but at least the chair knows. So.
Right. Okay.
Thanks.
Pete?
Pete?
Could you go back one slide? So the words are not public declaration of implementation. There must be a commitment to implement.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean anything terribly formal. So I don't think softening it to intent actually changes the meaning of this in any useful way. The other thing I want to say is I remember when this text first went in, and this text first went in because there were objections to even thinking about chartering the group because it would turn out to be an attractive nuisance. Mm-hmm. That everybody would bring every little draft they had and just keep pouring stupid things that would waste a bunch of time and then never get implemented. And so we wanted at least a person in the working group to make a commitment. I'm perfectly okay with a participant in the working group saying, I can't say that we are doing this, but we're doing this to the chair or, you know, to the AD. The third party stuff, I guess that's okay, but it gives me the willies of people doing idiotic things. But there should be at least one other person other than the author who can at least whisper to a chair or an AD, yes, we're doing it.
Should we count IPR claims?
Yeah, basically all of that. And also, even if there's a few companies who can't say anything because of their roadmaps, if you can't get a couple of people who in the room will say, yeah, this seems good to me, we'll do it, then it's not a problem we've had. And it's just a way that the chair can block totally useless stuff from being proposed if no one else wants it. I don't see a problem. We're chartered, right? There's nothing stopping us from doing this. I don't see a need to change it or a need to worry about this.
And one counter argument I made on the list is we haven't taken anything away from the IETF. You can still go to the ISE, you can still ask for AD sponsorship, you can still dispatch stuff. It just means you need to do it through this working group.
Michael.
I know that we're running right out of time, and I know this is just kind of crossing into other business, but intentionally didn't try to bring it up, like make a time segment for this one. But I did have some questions on the mailing list that weren't really answered. This is the mail maintenance group, and it seems to encompass, we've had the drafts for our transparent two-factor authentication, the client ID, which most people here are familiar with. We're now at draft number 8. It's been adopted by 6 different vendors and several open source projects. I would like the working group to adopt these drafts.
I can make a call on the list.
Yeah.
And John.
Is he still there? John Clinton?
John Clinton, you still there?
Sorry, it's late here and I forgot to turn myself on.
All right.
I agree completely with everything Pete said. 2 additional observations which may be useful or not. One of them is that I don't think there's anything in the charter which prevents somebody from bringing forward a document as experimental. And if somebody does not have approval for it's any sort of commitment to implement and can convince the working group to take something on as experimental, that seems to be particularly to be entirely reasonable. Now, I would hope the working group would be fairly unreasonable by such suggestions, but they're not prohibited by the charter as I read it. The other observation is if we jump into our time machine and go back to ancient history when 2026 was written and when we still believed that there were going to be a 3-level standards process which would work because we were very naive. Proposed standard deliberately did not require implementation commitments although because it required only seriousness, because in fact it was a proposed draft document of something that was intended for exposure and is intended for people to then go off and implement. I think we're going around in that circle again. It is not productive. And again, I had no problems with the charter at this point.
Thanks.
Thank you, John. So what I've heard is from the room that we're comfortable with what we currently have in the charter. No changes necessary.
That's what I'm hearing too. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Mary.
I think if serious problems show up, we'll fix it then.
I'm fine with that.
Otherwise,
All right. We are officially out of time. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your week.
See you back here in half an hour for JMAP.
Oh, yeah, and a quick personal note, I'm going to be jetting early from JMAP. So if I don't get to each one of you, consider this a group farewell, and I will hope to see you in Dublin.
I will be 5 to 10 minutes late for JMAP, so if you need any stuff, just push down a bit.
No problem. Thanks, Mary.
Did I do anything else at this point? Am I
That's basically done.
My problem with naming people now is really just the